Good evening and welcome to another live episode of Don't Talk TV. We're doing our live a week early this month, I guess you could call it, even though we're not into June yet, just because I have some prior engagements going on next week that would preclude me doing a live episode. So got a few things in the news lately that we're going to comment on, and I hope it'll be an interesting show. As always, bring the questions. Happy to answer questions. That's what the lives are for primarily. So with that said, let's get right into it. Good evening. My name is Nicholas Wands, but I'm a lawyer in Stratford, Ontario, Canada, and welcome to Don't Talk TV. So again, we're live. If you're viewing this on Thursday, the 28th of May, and happy to have you with us. If you are live, I see we've already got 7 viewers, so that's great. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, I just have to remind everyone, ask you to comment, like, share. I mean, that's the only way we're going to beat the algorithm. And I've been really happy to have more comments lately. So thank you for responding to that plea. And keep it up. We'll eventually break through 10,000, and who knows where we'll go from there. And again, reminder, we do still have mugs if you're interested. Richard, you're going to have to remind me how much they are. I think it's $10. We're selling them at cost, and then just whatever the postage is, which unfortunately, postage isn't, like everything these days, isn't as cheap as it used to be. I think $20 is the most, if it's somewhere further away from us than in Ontario. But if you're interested, again, we're selling at a cost. We're not making a profit off of it. But again, thanks for joining us. So a few interesting things in the news lately. The first one harkens back to one of my earliest episodes, episode 8. It was called Cops Gone Wild. I was a Barrie OPP officer who pistol whipped this kid for the crime of riding a skateboard downtown Barrie during COVID. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. I tried looking up to see what, if anything, has come of that case. But this evening's episode is also OPP. I don't think it's Barrie, but let's put this up here, and I've got to share this. I mean, I can barely even think about this without laughing, and you'll see why if you haven't heard of this case before now. So, lawyers make closing arguments in OPP officer's manslaughter case. So this is a case where an officer actually did get charged, and I think you'll see why he got charged in a moment. So this is from a few days ago, last week on Friday. Closing arguments were done, so we're not going to have a decision till at least June the 24th. So I'm not going to be able to tell you what happened to this officer, but I mean, this article opens with a bang, and we just got to start. And I can barely not laugh about this. So, did OPP Constable Sean O'Rourke trip and fall into the car of Nicholas Greaves, causing his gun to go off, or was that all a lie to cover up O'Rourke's alleged carelessness that he never would have drawn and pointed his gun and allowed his finger to come into the trigger? So lawyers for Crown Defense have made this argument. I mean, I hate to laugh because it's terrible that a young man, 24 years old, was shot and killed and died. He committed a crime, but stealing $40 worth of gas is not worthy of the death penalty. And it's certainly not worthy of Judge Dredd style roadside execution. But I mean, I just have to laugh at the utter absurdity and preposterousness. This officer claims that he tripped and fell into the accused car, and the gun somehow went off and killed this poor man. There's just a picture from the scene. So this guy did apparently lead the police on a bit of a chase, which again, that's not good. That's criminal, but that doesn't mean he deserves to get shot. So during testimony, this officer O'Rourke said Grieve rammed his police vehicle, an action he described as violent, intentional, and something that increased the danger of serious harm or death O'Rourke perceived in the situation. There's some merit to that because, yes, while you're still in vehicles, but, the shooting happened after that. And this isn't a 1980s action movie where cops are discharging their firearms, shooting out the window at individuals. There's experts said that he believed O'Rourke had exaggerated the risk, ignored the innocent possibilities behind the incident. It was not reasonable for him to draw his firearm, which, how does drawing your firearm help you if someone's driving a car crazy to begin with? I guess Nicola's the crown attorney. The whole, I tripped and fell into the car and my firearm went off accidentally. It's just incredible. And here's the thing. If a civilian did that, this wouldn't even be a trial. They would have pled guilty. Or if they did have a trial, there'd be no doubt whatsoever that they'd be convicted. Whereas I'm sitting here saying, well, maybe he'll be convicted. I don't know for sure whether he'll be convicted or not. I think he most likely will, but. So Prairie says, wow, this stupid cop couldn't even use the usual cop explaining of I was in fear for my life. And yes, that is the common terminology that they use. And that probably would have been the smarter play for this officer. I just can't get over I tripped and fell and my firearm went off. So, and this is this comment from Legend here saying that police are scum. This is exactly what things like this cause. People lose their trust in the police. And as Legend goes on to say, saying that police are enforcers of the tyrannical anti-white state. Unfortunately, I can't completely disagree with that because very frequently the police are enforcers of that. Now, I know a lot of officers, and I talk to them very off the record in court while we're waiting between court, and I don't think many of them want to be the enforcers, but is that a defense? As we know, I was just following orders. That wasn't a defense at Nuremberg. I don't know that is a defense here. Good person, but actions do speak louder than words. And I think it's problematic the way police are used. And the problem is, I think doing that job, you'd be under immense pressure to do immoral things. It's a very difficult job. And it's very difficult in 2025. I think it's exceptionally difficult to do that job in a good moral way. You think of, there's police everywhere. You think of police in communist countries. I'm sure a lot of them also joined their police forces with good intentions, thinking that they wanted to protect other citizens, thinking they're going to do a good job, and then they're being forced to enforce the political will of the Communist Party. I think that's a reasonable comparison. There's way too much political enforcement of crimes, but in my view, the biggest problem is the lack of accountability. And that really undermines trust in the police. I understand that police having a difficult job and giving them some reasonable benefit of a doubt, but in my view, the benefit of doubt frequently goes much too far. Police are given doubts that regular citizens aren't given. And I, as viewers of this channel, I hope you'd agree that the way I portray things, or the points I put forward, is in a manner that I'm in favor of everyone being treated the same before the law. And that's the thing that really frequently gets me with when police use their firearms for things, is if citizens would be given the same benefit of that doubt, I would be okay with the police using their firearms in that fashion. But the fact that they wouldn't be. Now, again, this case, this officer is being held to account. But we talked, I touched on episode 8, the officer from Barrie. I think Prairie is saying that's Constable Jason Stamp. I just did a Google search just to see, has anything come of that case? And of course, what do we have that came of that case? Just news articles saying that this skateboarder is a bad person. So if you're a skateboarder and violent police takedown does time for assaults, the violent police takedown being the pistol whipping that we showed, which you can't even find anywhere other than episode 8 of Don't Talk TV. We tried looking, and those links are all not available. So if you want to see what happened there with the officer pistol whipping this young man with his taser, check out Don't Talk TV episode 8. That's another reason why we do this channel. Who knew that my little law channel that was originally intended as more kind of a marketing thing, that it's becoming an archive of recording things that have happened. But I digress. So we have Barry, man at center of violent arrest, sentenced for unrelated charges. Man at heart of violent downtown arrest, facing several charges. So they're just talking about this terrible skateboarder. I mean, maybe he is a bad guy. I don't know. He's facing some other charges. I don't know. But I couldn't find anything to suggest that officer was charged with anything. And Prairie suggests that the officer who says he tripped and fell and his firearm accidentally went off, be on paid leave for 3 years before we hear any more. Well, it appears he's been on paid leave for 4 years already. I think they said it was 2021, July 2021. I'm sure he's been on paid leave for all that. But I think we'll hear about it June 24th, the final decision on that. So we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, it's just anyone who's used a firearm knows how utterly preposterous that is to say that I tripped and fell and my firearm went off accidentally. That's not how firearms work. And especially pistols, they have a fairly heavy trigger pull on them for exactly that reason. And OPP use Glock 17s, I believe. Someone can correct me in the comments section. I always get it mixed up whether they have Glock 17s or Glock 19s. I'm pretty sure they have 17s. I think Glocks are the big one. No, OPP do not use Sig Sauers. They definitely use Glocks, and I'm 90% sure it's a Glock 17 that they use. Yes, 4 years already at Prairie, and in before he raises the I was denied my right to trial in a reasonable amount of time argument. We'll see if that happens, because 30 months is the presumptive date that you've been denied your right to trial in a reasonable amount of time. In any event, I believe the OPP sidearms have safeties, so why is the safety off? But two, firearms don't go off from tripping and falling unless you're doing something incredibly stupid with it. So it seems to me this is carelessness or malice. It was 100% correct for him to be charged, but it is one of those extreme cases where they actually did get charged. But I think that's enough said about that. I wasn't not wanting to just be beating up on cops or on police state. I mean, police, they do a lot of good stuff, and it's funny, they get attacked by the left and the right. But I can't pretend that they don't do the things that they do, and especially COVID, you can see a lot of things. Now, that depends on the police too, because I have to say, to their credit, the police around here in Stratford the only charges that they ever laid that I'm aware of for COVID-related things were for when there was that big protest. I think most of those charges, all the charges of people who got represented by legal counsel who argued the Charter rights and freedoms all got their charges withdrawn or were acquitted. I think there was one person for sure, maybe more, who tried doing some Bill of Rights and some sovereign citizen and Canada's a corporation argument and got absolutely annihilated by the court. But that said, I mean, Stratford police weren't they weren't doing much bad during COVID. Not some good encounters with some OPP in this area as well, who were not going after people during COVID. So there's anecdotes going both ways. I think the bottom line is police are human beings, and you're not automatically a good person for being a police officer any more than you're not automatically a bad person for being a defense lawyer. So moving on, maybe we'll talk a little bit about Alberta. That's still in the news. I've had some people asking questions in the comments box, so I wanted to just take the opportunity to point out we have talked about a few of these things. Now, episode 235, maybe not as obvious, because I was talking about whether it's even legal or possible Trump, well, the United States to absorb Canada, for Canada to become a 51st state. So the short answer to that is it's actually exceptionally difficult, and for the same reasons that I said, it's extremely unlikely to the point of being, I would say, impossible for Canada to become the 51st state, is the same reason why Alberta separation would be extremely, extremely difficult, most likely impossible. And again, episode 235, have a look at that for more detail. But the too long don't read or too long didn't watch version is that for anyone to separate, to leave Canada, it would require an amendment of the charter. And for the charter to be amended, you need unanimous consent of the federal government and all of the provincial premiers. So all it would take is just one provincial premier to just say, no, screw you, we're not letting you out of the country. So we've got a comment here, being the 51st state is stupid. I tend to agree. There might be some superficial benefits, but I mean, it's not going to happen. So this is a complete academic argument or discussion in any event, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I think there's sufficient differences. Akasha the Niles one, is that why Quebec is still part of Canada? No, the reason Quebec is still part of Canada is because they've never achieved 50% of the population in their referendums. I believe they've had two. Both times the referenda failed, and the people of Quebec did not sufficiently vote in favor of separation for them to even start the process. But if they did vote sufficiently that way, they wouldn't be they wouldn't be legally able to. Now, de facto, maybe they would, but the thing is, Canada is still its own thing. I think things have become a lot more similar between Canada and the United States culturally because of television and the internet and us speaking the same language. But Canada is still certainly distinct from the United States. And part of that distinction is that we're a constitutional monarchy. So I've been happy to see that the king, our king, the King of Canada, which, I mean, people in the news and people who fancy themselves, they think that being some big Republican is going to change something in terms of our freedoms. Say, no, he's the King of Britain. No, he's the King of Canada as well. That's one of his titles. So especially people in the United States who are saying, some foreign ruler. Well, no, he maybe lives in a foreign country, but he's not foreign. He's the king. So Donald Trump can deal with that. But, that's about all we could say. Episode 250, we talked about it in more detail as well. And I guess another thing that I'd say with Alberta, I think it's unfortunate some of the personalities that have risen to the top of being spokespeople of this. I think there's some problems with that that will undermine the effectiveness of what they're trying to do. But that said, the third thing that I was interested in talking about is another very recurring, ongoing topic. Actually, 2 in 1 here. We talk a lot about hate crimes, and we talk about unequal application of the law a lot. And here's an article that I just saw today, although the article's from yesterday, that gives us a bit of both. We got a bit of hate crime and we got a bit of unequal application of the law going on here, in my view. So the title is this article from Global News is still no decision on hate charges for British Columbia woman 1 year after praising Hamas attack. So by waiting a year, they probably already scuttled this case because there's going to be a lot of pre-charge delay. But Canadian Jewish groups are questioning why BC prosecutors have taken more than a year to decide whether a woman who made explosive comments at a Vancouver rally last year should face hate crime charges. Vancouver police arrested this lady, Charlotte Cates, and recommended she be charged with willful promotion of hatred. I don't really understand why they needed to recommend that, why they couldn't just impose that. I mean, because the police don't ask for permission to charge people with anything else. So that's odd. They recommended to charge willful promotion of hatred for an April 29th, 2024 speech at Vancouver Art Gallery, where she praised the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel as heroic and brave. And she led the crowd in a chant of long live October 7, and called for the delisting of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and several other groups as terrorist organizations, describing them as resistant fighters and heroes. So, and interesting, her own group has been declared a terrorist entity. But, you know, we've seen in other articles the lengths that our government will go to hunt down people who've made memes for other groups declared terrorist entities, like Adam Waffen, which doesn't even exist anymore. But I've talked about that case of, I think, Mr. McDonald is the last name. It's in, Richard just posted to the chat, the hate crime, with the hate crime playlist. You know, I just find it interesting. They'll go to the literal ends of the earth to uncover behind the VPNs who Dark Foreigner is, because he made some memes or some pictures for one terrorist group. But another active member of a terrorist group promoting killing people, no, we were waiting a year without a charge. Now, I mean, Jasmine Rose makes a very valid point here, saying with this specific topic, I remain like Switzerland, neutral when it comes to Israel and Palestine. So I certainly agree. There's no heroes in this. There's no good guys in this Israel-Palestine. Now, that said, as bad as the Islamic Jihad is, and you know, murdering people unless they convert to worship Allah, I mean, that's terrible. But bombing aid convoys, starving children to death, bombing hospitals, I mean, that's reprehensible as well. And genocide is genocide. Genocide is evil and wrong, regardless of who you're genociding. So, Akasha of the Nile says there are only victims in war, loss of life. I mean, generally true. I mean, there are some circumstances where there are, you know, you can think of certain just wars. They're fairly far and few between, but there's some just wars where something was actually accomplished. But anyway, so despite the police recommendation, this lady still has not been charged. The Crown Attorney's Office hasn't approved charges for 13 months. So I find that one, you know, very interesting. Ties, I mean, the fact that it's even a crime to say that, which is, I mean, that's, you know, there's a philosophical thing right there. Should people be allowed to, I mean, are words a crime? Is supporting a certain group in and of itself with words, is that a crime, or should it be a crime? It's clear that in Canada it is a crime if you insult the wrong people or you say something against certain people or you belong to a certain group, notwithstanding our Charter of Rights and Freedoms allegedly guaranteeing freedom of association and freedom of speech. So, you know, you got that. But then again, there's the unequal application of law. The fact that this lady hasn't been charged. I think it's, when you look at other cases that we've covered on this channel and other things that have been considered hate crimes, in my view, it's very clear that if someone who wasn't a Hamas supporter, someone who supported a different group, someone who, say, was waving the red ensign or you know, Canada's pre-1964 flag, or a certain German flag, and said what she said, maybe not specifically October 7th, but praised some attack on Israel, I can pretty much guarantee they'd be charged immediately. I mean, you can look at the former leader of the Nationalist Party, Travis Patron, I'm not sure how he pronounces his name. He was charged and convicted, and we covered that. Again, you can just look at the hate crime playlist. He said that there's a parasitic tribe that runs, I paraphrase, you can check my episode, actually play the clip that he got charged for, but again, just, you know, to explain what he got charged with, he said words to the effect of, there's a parasitic tribe that controls all the banks and all the media, and they should be removed from our country. In a nutshell, that's what he said. charged, convicted, sentenced to years in jail for that. In my view, that's significantly more mild than praising the October 7th attack, which, among other things, involved an attack on a music concert. I mean, that's not a valid military target. So, this goes back. I think you can see a trend, and especially if you watch the playlist I've referenced a few times now, you can see a certain trend of who gets charged and who doesn't. And you can burn Christian churches down. Why? I mean, I suppose ostensibly if they actually investigated that and looked into who did it, maybe they'd get charged. But if you burn, if you say things, or if you vandalize statues, that's not a hate crime as long as it's Canadian heritage you're vandalizing. But if you say things, you do get charged. I think you can see a pattern there. And speaking of getting away with things, Richard, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but so that I'm not looking away at my screen doing a quick Google search, the whole Kamloops, we're talking about genocides. We'll talk about a non-genocide. The whole Kamloops thing, we're how many years away now? And when it first came out, I forget the episode number, but it's in the teens, I think, one of the early episodes. I talked about, episode 37. I thought it was in the teens. It was more recent than that. I talked about, that whole burial site thing. I said, well, look, if you're saying a crime happened here, it should be investigated as a crime. Of course, to my knowledge, it wasn't. There's been some investigation, and that investigation is that no bodies have been found. So, everyone, and let me once again remind viewers, the Conservative Party of Canada, including everyone's beloved Pierre Poilievre, was among those who unanimously said this is a genocide. Well, now here we are years later, no bodies were ever actually found. And, this is the problem with these hate crime laws, or things like making it illegal to question things. For example, episode 226 that Richard has put in the comments there, where I talked to Michelle Sterling about her investigations and writings about the whole residential school system as a whole, and the fact that our government is planning on making it illegal to question or downplay the residential school in any narrative in any way. As I said repeatedly through that episode, what we discussed in that episode will be illegal if that law goes through, which it probably will. I wasn't aware of this, but Saniko says that the previous chief even said that was a communal graveyard, not some mass grave where they murdered children in a residential school and tossed them into the grave. But I mean, that said, I don't think they've actually found bodies, be it communal grave or otherwise. So no bodies found there, and apparently Manitoba, there's another site there, Prairie's sharing with us, then they haven't found any bodies there either. So you get these narratives, and the media spins it and says, mass murder, mass graves, and people they accept what the media says. Many people do. I think trust is waning in mainstream media, but still a lot of people trust it. But even if they don't trust it, it gets repeated enough. The average person, I bet if you ask them on the street, they would say, yes, it was terrible genocide that occurred at Kamloops, or not a genocide. At Kamloops, it wouldn't be a genocide in one place, but they would probably agree with that. But but there won't be any repercussions or consequences to the media for pushing that narrative, or let alone our members of parliament who made this declaration in the parliament. To the contrary, we may one day be hate criminals for me talking about this, and for people commenting in the live chat, even questioning this thing, even though there's no evidence of it. And that's a big problem I see with many of these so-called hate crime laws that say it's hateful to discuss or debate or do further research on certain historical incidents. We already have that. The Conservative Party of Canada introduced the law by way of a private member bill, and then it got taken over by the Liberals to make it a crime to question in any way the Holocaust, which, as I've said, the problem is I don't even know what you're not allowed to question, because they never define what the the narrative is that you must accept without being a criminal. They just say you can't downplay it, but I don't know what that means. Like, can you even talk about it without being a criminal? Like, I really have no idea what it means to downplay it, since they don't define what it is. So, I think that brings back the problems with these laws. But anyway, that said, it's been a gray, dreary week. I know I was talking with Richard before the show here. I've been kind of tired. It seems like everyone's tired. I think probably partly because of the weather. I've just had a particularly busy day with bail hearing and being in guilty plea court. So I think that's about all we got. Not a good conversation, and thank you for posting in the chat. But I haven't seen any burning questions to answer. So if you have questions, keep them in mind for next live, or you can send them to us. So as Richard's helpfully put on the bottom there, don'ttalktv@protonmail.com. Please send your questions there, or show topics you'd like to see us cover. But of course, I have to do my disclaimer. Being a lawyer, this video isn't legal advice. If you need legal advice, call lawyers. You can get something that's specific to your situation. And again, as I said at the beginning, if you found this video or you find any of my content interesting, helpful, informative, please like, share, subscribe. Please spread the word. Give likes, comments. That all helps us, and hopefully we can get there with our subscribers. I say we've been stalled out at 8,500 for years, so I'm hoping we can reach the 10,000 at some point. Saniko, interesting question. That's something I'd like to look into further before I answer that. Can we subvert the Constitution by appealing to the king directly to separate? My gut reaction is no, because we're a constitutional monarchy, so even the king is bound by the Constitution. But interesting to look into. We'll see if I'll see if I can find anything on that. So again, thank you everyone for joining us, and remember, don't talk to the police.